Over the weekend, legendary Milwaukee Bucks coach Doc Rivers forcefully condemned the ICE violence that has taken over his hometown, the city of Chicago. Take a listen.
I mean, it's just awful what you watch and see, and people getting zip tied. I mean, that's not this country. That's not what we're about. It's just wrong. I think every American is good with. There's criminals on the street. We want to arrest the criminals. My dad was a cop, for Christ's sakes. My dad would not be proud of this. I know that. My dad would have a major problem. I couldn't imagine my dad going to work right now and have to protect ICE agents and doing what they're doing. I couldn't imagine him wanting to go to work. I think he'd call in sick.
The footage of children being zip-tied, of innocent people being tear-gassed, of priests being shot with non-lethal pepper balls by their own government has disgusted and shocked a large swath of our country, bringing together everyone from Bernie Sanders to Marjorie Taylor Greene, Zach Bryan to Bad Bunny, Jimmy Kimmel to Joe Rogan, in condemning the massive overreach by Donald Trump. And in the face of that unified opposition to what Donald Trump is doing, what does the Trump administration do? Do they change course like they did with child separation in 1.0? Not this time. This is important. This time they are working overtime to do what we were talking about in the last block, to create propaganda, to skew the reality of what people understand is happening in their names on the part of the U.S. government, on the ground in cities like Chicago and Portland, to selectively edit and make their actions look somehow justified. What you're watching is a video produced with your taxpayer dollars. We'll spare you the sadistic background music that accompanies the images, which is meant to make places like Chicago look like a war zone. We've also blurred the faces of the people featured in their videos who, as far as we know, have not been convicted of any crimes. We show this to you because this is what the Trump administration is projecting to the American people and to the world to justify their increasingly unpopular actions amid what can only be described as propaganda, state-sponsored propaganda. Notably absent are the stories like the one we showed you yesterday, the heartbreaking video of Maricela Rosales Castillo being detained and swept off the sidewalk into a van on her way from picking up groceries to make dinner for her family. Joining our coverage, MSNBC senior national and political correspondent Jacob Sobroff is back at the table. Also joining us, Director of Communications and Public Policy for the ACLU of Illinois, Ed Yohnka, is back with us. Jacob, take us through this.
It's propaganda is the word you used in the last segment. That's exactly what this is. When you watch that video, the DHS, it was almost on cue after we had the conversation yesterday about the videos that citizens on the streets are taking that are driving people and will drive people to protests like the one that's happening for No King's Day this weekend. They put out these videos literally from Earth 2, as you say, a completely bizarro take on the reality of the situation that they are carrying out all across the country, and particularly in Chicago right now. It's like they're making an episode of Cops. They said we have 1,500 criminals in the caption that we have detained since the beginning of the operation in Chicago. That is preposterous. There is no way that all 1,500 of those people have criminal records other than being undocumented immigrants in this country, particularly if we could run it back, the video outside the bakery, and I can just describe to you what we're seeing because I was there. I was there 20 minutes after this video was taken. That guy in the hoodie is Daniel Cabrera. He's 30 years old. He's a mechanic. He has no criminal record whatsoever. He has little children, and he is on his way to being deported back to Mexico. That is Mario Martinez, who they didn't have a warrant for, the other guy in the red shirt. He ended up having a criminal record from over 10 years ago. His family says he's had a clean record ever since. But it's not like they went out there looking for him. They are indiscriminately rounding people up. And then with their documentary crew, which is, I think, a generous way to describe it, making these slick-looking videos in order to try to convince people all around the country that this is some massive effort to rip the worst of the worst off the streets. And instead, really what they're doing is getting the Maricelas. That same videographer was there with Maricela. You don't see her, 53-year-old Maricela, with her backpack and her hoodie in this video because they don't want to show you that story. They don't want to tell you that she was on her way to pick up meat to make a stew for her daughter, Samantha. and they took her with 12 different agents on the street and a bunch of vehicles. They are crafting and creating a story that is divorced from the reality of the situation on the ground.
Are people buying it?
I don't think so. I think that that's why 7,000 people showed up marching up and down Michigan Avenue last week when I was there. I think that's why this No King's Day protest this weekend will be largely focused around not only the immigration issues on the streets, the fact that they're taking innocent people off the streets, but that people feel like their democracy is being challenged on the streets. People don't look at that and say, that's what it looks like on the streets of Chicago. They say, that's what it looks like when I watched cops sitting at home on a Friday night, eating popcorn with my kids. This is not what's really happening on the streets of America.
I mean, it's why they've lost Joe Rogan. I mean, his words were, these are not the sights and the sounds. If they don't break your heart, you don't have a heart, was his quote.
And Donald Trump knows, we've talked about this a million times, the reason family separation ended was because he said, I did not like the sight and the feeling of the families being separated, responding to Ginger Thompson's incredibly important audio she obtained of those kids in the Border Patrol facility.
Wailing at ProPublica.
Wailing, and the Border Patrol agent said, oh, we have an orchestra here. He wants to create his own images so that he can create his own feelings to convince the American public that the way things are the way he wants them to believe they are, despite the reality on the ground.